Good evening, everybody. Mike Naso here from IPR 365 with an update on the tropics. It's been a slow August, but things are going to quickly change as the conditions as we head towards the peak of hurricane season get very favorable very quickly. And while you can never tell if a hurricane is going to hit, it only takes one, especially for your area. And we've had a lot of named storms. Here's the list. Obviously, we've been through all of these names up into Fernand, which we have this evening. The next name is Gabrielle, and it does look like we will get Gabrielle and Umberto and Ingrid and Jerry, possibly a good burst of storms into September, including our first hurricanes and major hurricanes. So whether or not they hit land, we don't know. Some of the long-range models do show long-track Cape Verde hurricanes, potentially with land impacts. And whichever names those are, we will have to deal with in the future. So even though right now it seems slow, we could be dealing with a Hurricane Jerry in just a couple of weeks. So literally things will get very active very quickly, it appears, in the Atlantic Basin, as they have this evening with Tropical Storm Fernand. Now, Fernand is at 19.2 north, 95.8 west. Winds were 45, gusting to 60, but there is some idea that this might be a good bit stronger than that. It's moving west at about 9 miles an hour, 1,003 millibars. Now, thankfully, it's going to move inland very quickly within the next couple of hours, so it will not have time to become a hurricane, but if it were over water, this would have an ample opportunity to become a hurricane. And this is how Hurricane Brett formed back in '99. It was a very well-organized disturbance, moved out into the Bay of Campeche. But unlike the track of Fernand, which is developing here and then moving into land, Brett developed further out and kind of twisted its way west and then back north and then back into the South Texas coastline. So by the time Brett began to move faster, not only was it moving over open water, but it had already become a Category 1 hurricane. And of course, Brett rapidly became a 145 mile an hour hurricane. It weakened to a Category 3 before it hit Texas on August 22nd, I believe it was, way back now in 1999, but it hit such a sparsely populated area that luckily there were no significant impacts from that hurricane, and the name was not even retired from the name list. Nonetheless, Fernand is a small tropical cyclone. You can see tropical storm force winds do not extend out that far at all, and the deal with small ones like this is that they could strengthen pretty quickly. Now here's Fernand throughout the day, and you can see as the sun goes down just a beautiful bursting tropical cyclone there. The actual center appears to be a bit far off from where this is twisting around. Nonetheless, it does appear to be intensifying as it comes inland, and there's always the tiny risk that it could become a hurricane if those winds were found, but whether it did or not, the wind field's so tiny, and the main impact will be heavy rainfall right along the coast with some high swells, but again, an organizing tropical storm as it moves ashore. Now, when we look off the coast of Africa, we do have a wave leaving and then another wave behind that, and the Cape Verde waves have been having to deal with a lot of dry air, but that appears to be changing. The MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, will be in an uptick as we head right towards early September. So while the next week shouldn't be extremely active, we should start to see more favorability as time goes by, and we will get a decent burst of storms. Now remember, looking back at some past hurricane seasons, 1988 we had obviously Hurricane Gilbert, which was the second strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic. That wasn't until September, and then later on in the year we had Hurricane Joan down here, which devastated Bluefields, Nicaragua, as a Category 4 hurricane, and both of those occurred well after September and made it a memorable season. And you can see 1998, 10 years later, if you recall, Hurricane George was a devastating hurricane, killed hundreds in the Caribbean, took aim as a Cat 4 in mid to late September, and then went over the Florida Keys after devastating the Caribbean and the Greater Antilles, hit Biloxi, Mississippi in late September as a Category 2 hurricane. We also had Earl around that time in early September, which took aim at the Gulf Coast as a Category 2 hurricane, and we had Mitch, which killed 12,000, was the second deadliest hurricane ever, which was in the very end of October, early November. So there is still ample time for many, many storms. And think about all the storms that came after George. We had Ivan, we had Gene, Carl, different Ivans and Gene than the ones you're thinking of. But they all turned out to sea. But they could have easily been in a pattern to where they would have affected land later on. And so we would have had to deal with that. In '99, obviously, a hurricane season I remember well. I was still young then, but for those of you watching who don't remember hurricane season '99, I told you about Brett, obviously, at the end of August. We had Dennis, then we had Floyd, then we had Gert, which were all very significant hurricanes. Obviously, Floyd seriously threatened the U.S. before hitting as a Category 2 up in North Carolina, killed 56 people, caused $6 billion in damage from flooding. There was one point where it was easy to remember the top 3 costliest hurricanes. It was Andrew, Hugo, and Floyd. Now that list has gotten changed so much that I believe it's Katrina, Sandy, and Ike. All of them within the last couple of years, and none of them, by the way, anything more than a Category 3. So it'll be interesting to see how those inflation changes the rules with hurricane damage. Even a rare, even a not rare hurricane or run-of-the-mill Cat 1 can cause extreme damage. Later that year, we had Hurricane Irene in Florida, Hurricane Lenny, almost a Cat 5 in the islands in late November. So that was an example of how things were busy. Once we got past September in the year 2000, we had hurricane. At one point, we had Isaac, Joyce, and Keith all at the same time, and that was around the last days of September of that year. So we were busy then. And then in 2001, we had 2 very severe hurricanes in the Caribbean. Category 4 Iris, October 8th, slammed in Belize, and Category 4 Michelle, November 3rd and 4th, which slammed into Cuba. Obviously, those were after September. So there's plenty of time for it to get busy, and trust me guys, it will. But I'm Mike Naso. That's the latest this time. I'll see you next time. If you happen to be watching from Mexico and you're in the area impacted by Fernand, batten down the hatches. Same thing along the Gulf Coast. A lot of rainy weather, all associated with the tropics getting a little bit more favorable with thunderstorm activity as we say goodbye to the dry air and hello to the hurricanes over the next couple of weeks. I'll see you next time.